Welcome to the Fire Sprinkler Podcast with Chris and Logan. NFSA has been the voice of the fire sprinkler industry for over 100 years. NFSA remains on the front lines helping the fire sprinkler industry get through emergency situations. Visit nfsa.org for more information on how they can help you navigate new government regulations or provide necessary online training for your staff today. NFSA, the voice of the fire sprinkler industry. This episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is a conversation I had with Shane Ray from NFSA. We chat about the daily changes in the industry because of COVID-19, the different things that are happening on construction sites, and different ways to keep you safe on site and in the office. Thanks for listening. Hashtag Fire Sprinkler Podcast, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Shane Ray from NFSA.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. Shane Ray from NFSA is on today, and we are going to talk about the kind of everything that's going on in the industry in regards to COVID-19. I know NFSA has been kind of working, sun up to sunrise. Nope, that's not right. Sunrise to sunset, trying to figure out what, how they can help the industry and contractors in general, keep guys working, keep guys safe. Shane, how have things been at the NFSA head office for you the past essentially month?
Well, Chris, it has been kind of crazy naturally. One of our first decisions was about our board meeting. Our board meeting was held the second week in March, and that was about the time we were seeing a lot of our companies put on travel restrictions. We were facing some government declarations naturally since January in the U.S. It had been a public health emergency, but up until the end of the second week, well, actually our board meeting, I think, was occurring the day that the United States declared a national emergency with this. We had seen some states declare states of emergency, so actually, I traveled back to Tennessee, so I'm at our coordination center in Tennessee. We have limited staff at our Maryland headquarters office, but from an infrastructure standpoint, we were set up to work remote. We all travel so much that, thank goodness, we had the technology to be able to continue to operate where we are, because that's key and vital to how our association functions in these days and time anyway. So it's been good to run operations here with a staff in Tennessee, a staff in Maryland, and of course our many, many people that we have all across the country. So we've been operating in this remote environment for the past 2 weeks, and it's been really good.
That's good that you guys essentially, without, maybe you had a little bit of thought in it, but the fact that you guys are across the United States, you kind of had a little bit of, you guys may have been set up a little bit better for a situation working from home. The conference is obviously kind of the first thing that's been the big event in fire protection that's been shut down. You guys decided to cancel the on-site portion of that. What are you guys going to be hoping to do in regards to the NFSA conference?
Yeah, our board decided that at their meeting, we had asked for some time to watch and see how this thing played out, but since it's April, I think, 30th and then May 1st and 2nd. So we had asked for some time, but the board thought it best to just go ahead and cancel that. And as soon as Arizona, we had many, many factors we put out for our staff as soon as this thing started that we would make decisions day to day, week to week, and month to month as this thing progressed, which turned out to be good decisions for us. And our conference was one of those things that the board wished to just go ahead and cancel as soon as Arizona declared a state of public health emergency because of cases in Arizona. So some states declare states of emergency just because of financial resources on the back end as well as resources on the front end. So certainly me coming from that world in a governmental setting, having been a mayor and a fire chief and then the direct appointee of a governor, these events are kind of within my wheelhouse. So as the board canceled that conference, canceled our annual seminar, which this is a non-expo year, so we don't have a big exposition. It's a business and leadership conference. And so now what our staff is doing, because as you said, Chris, we have been and are prepared technology-wise with our online training platforms, our Microsoft Dynamics systems that we have from Microsoft Teams, which is how we normally communicate, our staff decided, the leadership of our association decided to have our conference virtual. So I hope your listeners look forward to our conference occurring probably on the same dates that it was scheduled. It will have naturally limited number of speakers. It won't be 3 full days of conferences, but we do hope to have some of our keynote speakers speak and some of our technical sessions go forward. So as far as our annual conference, we hope to do that virtual, but as well as our annual conference, we have conferences around the country. We have our regional seminars, and then we've had probably dozens of training classes, from classes at our headquarters to classes all the way around the country. So we've had some of those conferences canceled as well. We may or may not be able to do those remote, so we'll probably reschedule some of those conferences. We had one that was going on planned for the week after it was declared a national emergency in Puerto Rico. Right. So I know our Florida gang that worked so hard on that will be rescheduling. We also had one planned for New Jersey that usually occurs in September that we may or may not push back. So hopefully the September conference will be a go, but the one in Puerto Rico would definitely have to be rescheduled. And then our dozens of training classes are being rescheduled, but we're also ramping up our online training platform so that people can get classes that are relevant to these days and times, and with small business loans and everything else that goes with it. So our teams are working very hard as we speak to get our online learning management system loaded with more classes.
So just kind of pay attention to the NFSA website and your email list, obviously, which is pretty big, for more information regarding the conference that is going to be going virtual here, hopefully at the end of the month, at the end of April.
Absolutely.
What so you spoke a little bit about the online training that's available for everybody here. Construction has kind of essentially, in my neck of the woods, and I know in a lot of places in the States, a lot of non-essential work has kind of stopped. So the people, I'm trying to put out as much content as possible, but people are still, the fire protection industry is a very passionate industry. They're always trying to pick up new things, learn things, et cetera, et cetera. How do people access the online training? Where do people register, and how often is it available?
Yes, they can go to our website, NFSA.org, and go to training. Our online platform's on there. And for all of our office workers or anybody that's working from home right now, Chris, we have a class that was put up not long ago, Fire Sprinklers 101. So it's something we put up there that says this ought to be for everybody that works in the industry, that starts out new in our industry, regardless of what their role is. And we've learned, too, that it's a good refresher for those of us that have been around a long time. So we have free classes that are up online right now that anybody that has some time, whether they're working at home or still in the office, if they're in safe and secure places, that can go online and take some of those classes. We have lots of classes, too, for inspectors, have lots of classes for people that work in the field as well. So lots of online platforms that are up on our website. And then tomorrow is our Tech Tuesday delivery is tomorrow. And so lots of things for people to do if they can't get out to the job sites. But we're working very hard to keep the job sites, again, and while this is a public health emergency, we also are going to have the economic fallouts as a result. So we at NFSA are doing everything we can to keep the essential services that we've got going during these times, because as more people are at home and as more job sites are left empty, we know that's when they're most vulnerable to fire. Right.
Yep. So with everything that is going on right now, I know you've been involved in kind of paying attention as well as staying updated with all the government regulation that's going on right now. I'm from Ontario, Canada. The premier just put a stop on all essential work. He hasn't determined, or he hasn't released what he's considering essential work as of yet. That list is going to come out tomorrow, and then essentially those people are going to be notified that at 11:59 tomorrow night they're out of work. In your experience in the U.S., what what type of work for the fire protection industry is being shut down as of right now?
Well, we took the approach, Chris, that we started with massive campaigns across the country. We wrote letters early on last week to governors and mayors, cities and counties and states across our country to say fire protection work, especially fire sprinkler work, is essential work. So we've adopted early on that said we're accustomed to safeguards, we're accustomed to keeping our members safe and keeping sites secure. So please consider us essential work. Now, we're also blessed to have on our side is our Department of Homeland Security, all the way back to the Homeland Security Act of 2002.
Right.
That classifies some essential work. So with that, the definition of what we know from our Department of Homeland Security critical infrastructure security agency is the fact that we're considered specialty contractors. And with that, they know that we have to keep hospitals, we have to keep government facilities, we have to keep all these things that our Department of Homeland Security considers essential. And in all of this as well, because the economy, because the housing boom, California was one of the first ones to go to a shelter-in-place requirement statewide with a governor declaration. But with that, they considered residential essential services because of the need for housing in California. So with that, we was able to create the documents and make sure that we could even not only keep our contractors working, but our suppliers and manufacturers working as well, because we had some incidents where we needed to get products from one state to another. So we had a call with our Department of Homeland Security and our Federal Emergency Management Agency to say, hey, how do we keep these trucks moving across the country? They have vital products to go places. And so from California and then to Boston to New York City, we had to keep trucks on the road. So we were able to get our classification as essential services. And now, Chris, we're watching it state by state, with Illinois being the most recent one. And we expect Minnesota, Ohio, some of our other states to follow suit. But we put a big campaign out, and our members engaged with the tools and resources we have to let their government officials know that says, hey, fire protection is a vital service, and fire sprinkler work has to continue. So the last thing we would want is within all of the U.S., and I'm sure Canada as well, they consider hospitals, grocery stores, pharmacies, pharmaceutical facilities, and then, of course, fire stations, police stations, public works facilities, water, sewer plants. It's like, well, we got to make sure those systems, fire sprinkler systems, are up and running. So right. In many states, we've had any place where a code requirement is there, that system is deemed essential, and it allows our people to go and do the work with it. We've seen job sites shut down across the country just because the general contractors are doing that. But in many states and in many cities, we've had those places considered essential services as well.
Do you know how the fitters in the field feel about that? Are they okay with going to work? It seems like a lot of the guys are trying to stay on the tools as long as possible, but is everybody on board with we've had over the weekend, probably 3 or 4 of our guys decide that they'd rather stay home with their families, which I have no problem with. If you want to stay home with your families, you're more than welcome to. If that's where your mind's going to be, that's where I want you to be. Is that the general consensus across the U.S. as well?
That is the general consensus. We've worked closely with our fitters and their teams and their representatives. Our contractors had a call today. And again, the general sentiment is that the best thing and everybody's number one priority is you and your family. But for the most part, where we can keep working, we've got the staff to keep working. And where those people who have, which again is where we put out the policy a month ago that said, your family and your health is number one. So work with your supervisors. So anybody that's concerned about having their own health reasons for needing to avoid exposure, they've certainly been allowed. And then, of course, the U.S. government has put in provisions that would pay people that wish to take that. They've added to our Family Medical Leave Act. So our legal and labor relations department has been helping our members work through that, our contractors and our employees. So they've been working through those issues as they come up individually, but we've seen great cooperation across the U.S., Chris, with how we handle this. How do we manage the work site, whether it's changing shift schedules, limiting the number of trades people on the job site, adding shifts to the site to put the workers in at different times, adding, of course, disinfectant stations, practicing their social distancing more. Some of the biggest challenge we've seen there is getting to healthcare facilities with contaminated vehicles. It's like you just have to designate and keep contaminated vehicles. How do we clean and decon our employees before they return out of a contaminated zone that they got to get back to a certain area we want them to certainly shower, change clothes and things before they go home to their families. So there's many, many provisions that we've been accustomed to in different settings for years and years. It's just all kind of come to a head here at one time.
Yeah, especially with maybe some of the contractors. We do a lot of work in chemical refineries and things like that. So I'm aware of the shower before you go home if you're working in certain environments and stuff like that. But some of the smaller contractors out there, and we're a small contractor, but some of the other contractors out there may not know of the steps to take in order to keep a safe, safety isn't just working with a hard hat and safety glasses. Safety kind of follows you all the way home.
Absolutely.
So this is a completely new situation that we're encountering here as an industry, as a country, as a world. We've never had anything kind of hit the entire world like this in such a short period of time that anybody alive remembers. I mean, I think they talked about the Spanish flu or something like that back in 1918 was the last thing that kind of went through the entire world like this. What do you suggest contractors do to kind of maintain business isn't as usual, but what kind of resources and what kind of recommendations do you have for contractors out there?
We'll certainly lean on your associations as we work through issues, whether it's leave and working through the Department of Labor and those that impact employees and contractors, to OSHA requirements, to the government regulations that try to keep us all safe. It's just lean on us. Transportation issues. There's some states that we're seeing that's waiving transportation requirements and restrictions so we can get vital supplies to certain areas. Some inspectors we're seeing that are doing inspections virtually, that if you can show them some of the things that's virtual, that they don't have to send an inspector to, because of some cities and counties and provinces shut down some of their workers. It's harder to get inspections done at the right time. But So just lean on your associations and then lean on each other. The one thing I think the fire sprinkler industry does well is share across lines. And so our companies, our contractors, they know what's their expertise and what's not their expertise. And I found everybody in this time. We just had most all of our contractors that are active in our boards, councils, and committees on a call today. So they're sharing what they're doing from California and Boston to Florida to Portland, Oregon, and certainly all in between.
Mm-hmm. It's it is a shared community with information for the most part. Very competitive, but friendly, formative industry that the sprinkler industry is. What other information or what other recommendations do you have for anybody to help deal with the COVID-19 epidemic that's going on right now?
Well, I think the biggest piece is as you focus on what's the immediate, it's like we're also geared up for how do we recover. Mm-hmm. So we also got to make sure that there's laws in the U.S. that Congress is passing laws, but state and local governments are also still working on budgets. So while they close down many of the public access to it, we're still very active in the legislative processes to make sure that the recovery and the stimulus of this includes fire protection, whether we're working on tax incentives for greater depreciation of sprinklers that are installed on taxes, to what's in the stimulus package for nonprofit associations such as ours that have had to cancel conferences, retooling how we do our training, how we deliver it best, how we can get to more people as the workforce has been laid off, and then as they return to work, how best can we get them back up to speed with their training. We're working to get CEU extensions in many of our states that require contractor or fitter licensing. It's like, how can we get extensions to that where people have been laid off from work? Mm-hmm. So there's many things that we're doing that already starts us down the path to recovery. But we also have to realize, too, that things are continuing. So as some of these states take up, as we had a case in Arizona where the restaurant and bar was required to install sprinklers for any restaurant or bar with over 300 occupants that serve alcohol, as that's a requirement in the 2018 International Fire Code. We've seen attempts to take those out, as we will across the country, is to say, hey, let's remove that provision. But as they shut down legislatures and the access of public to it, we knew that limited hearings. And so we've been asking that says don't take up any code provisions without professional input. Mm-hmm. So that is not something that should be taken lightly because, again, we know the tragic consequences. So, again, while this pandemic will certainly take thousands of lives, but so does the flu every year. So don't create fire situations that 20 years from now are going to claim lives from decisions that were hastily made today. So I would encourage everybody that says, while things are crazy today, the normal things that we always have to deal with are still present. And then as people are at home, as buildings are vacant, as people are not in their normal routines, there's also more fires, more accidents, and that kind of thing that still our fire and emergency services around our countries have to deal with every day. So don't forget the normal things that we're supposed to be doing as we deal with this crisis, and use this time to build up your resources and say, hey, what if this happens again?
Yeah. What I've been doing, I've been working from home now. What I've been doing, as well as like a ton of estimating and things like that. You can't really go out and do the site checks, but just working on the business in general, working on improving procedures, working on improving health and safety, just working on the business side of sprinkler is what I've been doing right now from home. Trying to look at the positive side of things. It's given me a lot of time out of the office that I'm not constantly getting distracted. Phone calls, emails, things like that. I can focus on kind of getting things up to speed with 2020. I won't call it a blessing in disguise, but get a lot accomplished when you're not getting pulled away from 1,000 things. Shane, thanks for coming on the podcast and talking about essentially what NFSA is doing to kind of help contractors deal with the COVID-19 epidemic. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to put them out right now.
Yeah, sounds good, Chris. Thanks for the opportunity. And again, keep working to improve our industry, and we'll keep doing the same. Take care.
Absolutely. Thanks for the support. Hey, everyone. This episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is done. If you liked this episode, leave a review, comment, or hop over to my social media pages and let me know. Just search Fire Sprinkler Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't forget to hashtag Fire Sprinkler Podcast and anything you think I should know about or see. If you have any suggestions for future episodes of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast, email info@firesprinklerpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.